Have you ever loved someone so much that even $1 million couldn't convince you to let them go? This story isn't just about love. It's about pride, fear, sacrifice, and the kind of heartbreak that even money can't fix. Mia stood there, tears in her eyes, as the briefcase lay open on the table. Neatly stacked bills, 1 million to be exact. Across from her stood Alex, the man she had loved with every piece of her soul. His voice was cold, rehearsed. Take it, walk away, forget me. But her answer didn't come from logic. It didn't come from the weight of all those bills. It came from her heart. No, she whispered. You can keep your money, but you'll never buy my silence. And with that, everything changed. They couldn't have been more different. Mia was the kind of woman who lived life simply. She worked at a cozy little bookstore nestled between a bakery and a flower shop downtown, the kind of place that smelled like paper, lavender, and fresh bread. She lived in a modest apartment with creaky wooden floors, hand-me-down furniture, and sunlight that streamed through lace curtains in the morning. Her world was quiet, peaceful, and predictable. Alex, on the other hand, was chaos in a tailored suit, CEO of Hartwell Enterprises, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. Alex was the type of man who made headlines just by attending a gala. His penthouse overlooked the skyline, his schedule was booked out months in advance, and his watch cost more than Mia's entire annual salary. Where Mia sought comfort and silence, Alex thrived in the noise of deals, deadlines, and power. Their paths were never supposed to cross, but fate, being the mischievous storyteller it is, had other plans. It happened on a rainy Thursday. Mia was on her lunch break, running to the cafe next door. Her umbrella had flipped inside out from the wind, and she was soaked. She dashed inside, bumping right into someone. Her coffee order almost flew from her hands. I'm so sorry. She looked up and saw the man she just collided with. Dark hair, piercing eyes, and a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her rent. He looked irritated, but also amused. It's all right, he said, dusting off his coat. I've had worse collisions with board members. She laughed nervously. That's a first. Sorry again. You work next door? He asked. She nodded. The bookstore. He glanced through the glass. I've walked by 100 times. Never noticed it. Well, Mia smiled, brushing a wet strand of hair behind her ear. Maybe now you will. And just like that, a seed was planted. He came back the next day, not for coffee, for a book, and then again the next week. One book turned into conversation. Conversations turned into shared lunches into strolls in the park. Their connection deepened in the quiet spaces that existed between their two vastly different worlds. He would listen to her talk about old novels and poetry. She would watch as he loosened his tie and let down his guard, slowly revealing a man who was more than his bank account. She made him feel human, and for Mia, Alex was the first person who made her feel seen, not for what she lacked, but for who she was. They were opposites, yes, but something about the contrast between them made the spark undeniable. The bookstore girl and the billionaire. An unlikely pair. But love doesn't care about statistics, and neither did they. They say real love is when two people bring out the best in each other. For Mia and Alex, love didn't arrive with grand gestures or poetic promises. It was quiet, unexpected, gentle in its unfolding. Their relationship grew in the margins of everyday life. Alex would sneak away from board meetings just to drop by the bookstore with his sleeves rolled up, bringing her her favorite tea and pastries from that little cafe on 7th. Sometimes he would sit for hours on the worn-out armchair in the corner, listening as she read aloud from her favorite novels. To the outside world, Alex was still the untouchable billionaire, cold, precise, always in control. But with Mia, he became something else. Vulnerable, open, real. He told her about the pressure of running an empire, of being raised to believe emotions were weaknesses, and how every relationship in his past felt more like a transaction than a connection. She told him about growing up in a single-parent home, about her dreams of opening a literacy program for underprivileged kids, and how she always felt invisible in a world obsessed with luxury. With Alex, she felt powerful. With Mia, he felt free. Still, there were moments quiet and fleeting when doubt crept in. They came from two different worlds. His driver would pick him up from dinner dates while she'd walk home in worn-out sneakers. Her friends would joke about dating up, while his colleagues raised eyebrows at her simple life. But Mia never wanted Alex for his wealth, and Alex never wanted Mia to change. He once told her, "You're the only person who doesn't want anything from me." She replied, smiling softly, "That's because you already have everything, except peace." Their love story was rare. It was the kind of connection that made the noise of the world fade into the background. But love, especially love that crosses lines of class, power, and fear, was never going to be easy, and they were about to be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. For the first time in his life, Alex Hartwell was afraid, not of failure, not of bad press or business collapse. No, he was afraid of her walking away. He had built his world on control, on carefully calculated risks. But Mia, she was the one thing he couldn't predict, couldn't buy, couldn't guarantee. The deeper he fell, the more vulnerable he became. And vulnerability, to Alex, was a danger zone. That's when the thoughts began to spiral. What if she's only here because of the fantasy, the excitement of dating someone like me? What if it's temporary? What if the truth of my world scares her off eventually? He started overthinking everything. He noticed how she never asked about his businesses, how she never came to any of his charity galas or media events, how she seemed detached from the public version of his life. Did that mean she didn't care? Or was she simply protecting herself? Then came the breaking point. One evening, after a charity event where he'd been hounded by socialites and reporters, he arrived at her place feeling drained and hollow. Mia opened the door, still wearing her cozy reading sweater, and welcomed him in with a soft kiss on the cheek. But his mind was already at war. "I don't belong here," he said suddenly. Standing in the doorway, she blinked. "What are you talking about? I'm from a different universe, Mia. The money, the expectations, the pressure. I'm not normal, and you deserve normal." She frowned, setting down her tea. "Where is this coming from? I love you," he said, almost like a confession. "But I'm afraid one day you'll realize you deserve more peace than I can ever give." She stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. "Alex, I never asked for peace. I asked for honesty, for love, for you." But he couldn't shake the fear, and so the plan began to take shape, reckless, flawed, but in his mind, necessary. If she was with him out of love, she would walk away even with $1 million in her hand. If she was with him for security or status, the money would expose it. It was cruel. It was desperate. But Alex didn't know how else to protect himself from the one thing money couldn't fix. Heartbreak. So he made the call. His assistant arranged the funds, and the following week, he walked into the bookstore with a briefcase, with trembling hands and a heart full of fear masked by pride. He looked the woman he loved in the eyes and said, "Take this, $1 million. Walk away. I won't stop you." Her voice was steady now, but her hands trembled at her sides. Mia slowly closed the briefcase. She didn't shove it away. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Instead, she looked him in the eyes and said something he never expected. "You think this is a test," she said quietly. "But it's not. It's a revelation." He looked confused. "You think I'll walk away and prove I was never serious, or that I'll stay and prove I'm loyal? But all this proves is how little you trust me." She walked around the table, now standing inches from him. "I loved you when you walked into that bookstore looking like a storm. I loved you when you couldn't sleep because of boardroom pressure. I loved you when you cried in my arms after your father passed. And you know what all of that had in common?" He didn't speak. She whispered, "None of it had anything to do with money." Alex's chest rose and fell heavily. He opened his mouth, closed it again. But Mia wasn't finished. You brought me a suitcase full of paper, she said, thinking it would either save us or destroy us. But what you didn't realize is that it already destroyed something far more fragile. He felt the truth hit him like ice. Your faith in me, she continued, was never stronger than your fear of being abandoned. And that hurts more than anything. She turned away then, not dramatically, not angrily, just broken. I won't take your money, she said, walking slowly to the back door. But I won't stay in a relationship where love has to be proven like a business deal. He tried to reach out. Mia, wait, but she was already gone. The briefcase sat alone in the center of the room. $1 million, and not a single piece of it could buy back what he'd just lost. The bookstore felt different without her. The armchair in the corner sat empty. The scent of old books lingered in the air like her memory. Alex stood there the next morning, dressed not in his usual suit, but in a hoodie and jeans, an odd sight for a billionaire. But nothing felt normal anymore. The moment she walked out, the world he knew unraveled. He didn't go to work the next day, or the day after that. His assistant called. Meetings were missed. Shareholders grew restless, but none of it mattered. Not the stocks, not the press, not the legacy he'd spent years building. He had built an empire out of steel and logic, and just like that, a single woman had made it feel completely hollow. Mia, on the other hand, tried to hold herself together. She went back to her routine, shelving books, smiling at regulars, pretending everything was fine. But when she got home at night, she'd collapse onto the couch, bury her face in a pillow, and cry until her chest hurt. What broke her wasn't the money, it was the fact that the man she loved didn't trust her heart. They lived just 12 blocks apart in the same city, but it felt like a world away. And as the days turned to weeks, both began to spiral, silently grappling with regret, doubt, and the aching echo of what might have been. Alex tried to distract himself, parties, events, business deals, but every smiling face, every glass of champagne, every passing moment reminded him of her, how she made tea with cinnamon sticks, how she wore mismatched socks, how she read him poetry on rainy nights. Mia tried to forget, but love like that doesn't just disappear. It lingers. It haunts. It waits for something to change. And fate, once again, was waiting for the right moment to interfere. Before the heartbreak, before the briefcase, there were moments, tiny threads that wove their story together in beautiful silence. It was only now, in their separation, that both began to remember them clearly. Mia remembered their first weekend away. Alex had booked a quiet lakeside cabin to escape the press. No cell reception, no headlines, just the two of them, a fireplace, and an old record player. They slow danced in the living room, barefoot, laughing as the record skipped. "You're not what I expected," she'd said softly, her head on his shoulder. "And what did you expect?" he asked. She smiled. "Someone colder." He'd pulled her closer. "You make it hard to stay cold." Alex remembered her birthday. He had offered to fly her to Paris, dine at a rooftop restaurant in Tokyo, or charter a yacht in Greece, but she had chosen none of those things. Instead, she asked for something simple: to visit a small-town library 2 hours away, one she loved as a child but hadn't returned to in years. He spent the whole day watching her run her fingers across old spines, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. Later, that evening, sitting beneath a tree with coffee in hand, she had looked at him and said, "This is what love feels like to me. Peaceful, quiet, real." He never forgot that. It wasn't the trips or gifts. It was the way she saw the world and made him want to see it that way too. And now, both of them, in separate places, replayed these moments like memories on a loop. What if he had trusted her more? What if she had waited a little longer? What if love was worth one more risk? Alex sat in his penthouse, staring at the skyline. The city blinked back at him like stars trapped in glass. He opened his phone, found her contact, hovered his thumb over the call button, but instead of calling, he texted just one sentence: I miss the way you made the world feel. He stared at the screen. No response. Not yet, but something had shifted in both their hearts. The silence between them was no longer distance. It was the sound of love trying to find its way back. The truth always has a way of clawing to the surface, especially the kind that's buried under fear and pride. It had been 3 weeks since Mia walked away, 3 long weeks of silence, until one evening, an unexpected visitor showed up at the bookstore. Jenna, Alex's longtime personal assistant. She stood at the doorway, clutching a small manila envelope. Her eyes were tired, as if she debated for days whether to come. "Hi," Jenna said gently. "Mia, we've never really talked, but I need to tell you something." Mia looked up from the counter. "Is Alex okay?" Jenna stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "He's existing, but he's not okay. I came here because you deserve to know the full truth." She slid the envelope across the counter. Mia hesitated, then slowly opened it. Inside were medical report scans, lab results, and a letter from a private hospital. "What is this?" she whispered, heart already racing. Jenna's voice cracked. Alex was diagnosed with a genetic neurological disorder. It's rare, degenerative, incurable. He found out 2 months ago. Mia looked up, eyes wide with shock. "He didn't tell anyone," Jenna continued. "Not even his board. But I knew. I've been with him for 10 years. I saw the symptoms: blackouts, hand tremors, mood shifts. And when I asked why he pushed you away, he said, because she deserves a future, not someone dying in pieces." Mia sat down slowly, her hands trembling now, not from betrayal, but from realization. He hadn't offered her money to test her. He'd offered it to save her. In his own twisted, prideful way, he thought letting her go was protecting her. "He told me," Jenna added softly, "that if she took the money, he'd know it was better this way. But if she refused, it would break him. Because then he'd know she really loved him and he'd be sentencing her to grief." Mia's breath hitched. "He was pushing you away to spare you the pain of watching him fade." A sob escaped her lips as everything began to make sense. His coldness, the fear, the offer. It wasn't pride. It was grief in advance. "I have to see him," Mia said, already reaching for her coat. Jenna nodded. "Go." She raced across the city in the rain. Every red light felt like a knife to the heart. Her phone buzzed. In her coat pocket, dozens of texts from Jenna now, one after another. Then one stuck out in all caps. "He collapsed. Ambulance on the way." Mia's hands tightened around the steering wheel. She nearly ran 2 red lights getting to his penthouse, where flashing ambulance lights painted the wet pavement in blinding color. She shoved past the concierge and security and sprinted into the building. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, she found them paramedics surrounding him on the floor of his living room. His face was pale, lips slightly blue, and his left hand clenched involuntarily in a tremor. "Alex," she cried, pushing through. One of the EMTs held her back. "Ma'am, please, I'm his emergency contact," she screamed. "Let me see him." They paused. Alex's eyelids fluttered. Through blurred vision, he saw her wet hair, rain-soaked coat, breathless. "Mia, I'm here," she whispered, kneeling beside him. Her fingers brushed his clammy cheek. "Why didn't you tell me?" He tried to speak but only managed a whisper. "Didn't want you to hurt." She leaned close. "You idiot. I was already hurting. Because you weren't there." Tears streamed down her face. "You don't get to decide when my love ends. Alex, that's not your choice." His fingers weakly found hers. "Didn't want to be a burden." "You're not," she said fiercely. "You're a human being, the one I love. And if you're going to fight this thing, you're going to do it with me." The paramedics moved in again. Mia stood aside, letting them work but never letting go of his hand. As they wheeled him toward the elevator, Alex looked up at her one last time before the doors closed and whispered, "You stayed." She nodded, heart pounding. "I'll always stay." The sterile white walls of the hospital glowed dimly under the fluorescent lights. Machines beeped softly beside the hospital bed where Alex lay, pale but breathing. N4 was hooked into his arm, a heart monitor clipped to his finger. He looked smaller now, less like the towering figure of a CEO, and more like a man at the mercy of his own body. But at his bedside sat Mia, not just for a visit, not for an apology, but to stay. She never left his side, not when he woke up from sedation, not when the neurologist explained the progression of his condition, not when the reality of the fight ahead finally settled in. "Can I be honest with you?" he whispered one night, eyes flickering toward her in the low hospital light. "Always," she said, brushing her thumb gently across his knuckles. "I thought if I pushed you away, it would spare you from watching me fall apart." Mia leaned in, resting her forehead against his. "Then you never understood the kind of love I have for you." He blinked. "And what kind is that?" "The kind that doesn't run at the sight of pain. The kind that chooses you, even when it's hard." She paused. "You offered me $1 million to walk away, but I would give everything I have to stay." Alex felt the lump rise in his throat. For once, the man who always had a response had no words. Later that week, he was discharged. Not to the penthouse, but to a quieter place, a lakeside retreat Mia found just outside the city. No paparazzi, no deadlines, just healing. Together, they built a new kind of life, one built not on money or power, but presence. Mia started a literacy nonprofit, and Alex, though physically limited, helped run the back-end operations from home. He was no longer the mogul everyone feared, but a man finally at peace, grounded by the love of a woman who saw him beyond the numbers. Their days were filled with small joys, reading in the sun, cooking together, laughing at old memories. Even on the hard days when the tremors returned or the pain crept in, Mia was there. Calm, steady, unshaken. He had once tried to protect her with money, but in the end, her love became his greatest wealth. It wasn't a grand wedding in a cathedral or a televised ceremony with diamond chandeliers. It was quiet, beneath an oak tree by the lake, surrounded by a few close friends. Alex and Mia exchanged vows. He held her hands, now more fragile than before, but firm in his conviction. "I tried to buy your absence once," he said. "Today, I vow to never take your presence for granted again." Mia smiled, her voice soft but full of certainty. "You once thought love had to be earned through sacrifice, but it was never about tests. It was about trust." They kissed. The lake sparkled behind them, and for the first time in a long time, Alex didn't feel afraid. Later that evening, they sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars. Alex whispered, "If I had to lose everything again, all the money, the business, the power, but keep you, I'd still be the richest man alive." Mia leaned against him, and in the silence that followed, there was no need for more words, because sometimes the greatest stories aren't about the riches we chase, but the love we refuse to let go of. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment love so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, spread love.